Welcome, everyone. My name is Stacy Glass. I'll serve as your host for this coffee break series, along with our communications lead, Sonia Elmquist, who's going to be monitoring the chat and the questions in the polls. But because this is such a short coffee break, we aren't going to have a lot of time for Q&A, but I want you to not hesitate to put your questions in that Q&A section, and we will definitely follow up after the session. You probably know EDF and our other featured guests in this series, but you may not know Chem Forward. We are a nonprofit, science-based organization that's growing a shared database of chemical hazard assessments for safer alternatives. And we're working in multiple sectors: beauty and personal care, electronics, and food packaging. We have a deep belief that when people have better data, they can make better decisions, and we're here to create access to that. I met Boma Brown West, our guest today, 4 years ago when I boldly recruited EDF to join us and others in a co-design effort in our early stages of solving this chemical hazard data set quandary. The co-design effort produced a good, productive effort. And from that, we built our infrastructure in 2019. And in 2020, we've run dozens of pilot projects. Now we're gearing up to launch a platform for broad availability of hazard data, and we felt like this was the perfect time to resurface and remind ourselves why the science of clean beauty is so important. So let's get to it. Boma Brown West is the Director of Consumer Health at the Environmental Defense Fund. She works at the intersection of science, policy, and corporate leadership. She is driving safer products to the retail marketplace in order to reduce people's toxic exposure to chemicals. And we love that about you, Boma. She has over 10 years of industry experience before joining EDF 7 years ago. And her educational foundation includes an MS in Technology and Policy from MIT and a BS in Mechanical Engineering from Yale. So welcome, Boma.
Thank you, Stacey. I'm glad to be here today and help to launch this coffee webinar series.
Thank you so much. Tell us first, how did you come to this work and why does it matter to you?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm an engineer, and I've always cared about public health and the environment. When I first realized the strong connection between the two, I knew that I wanted to work in the environmental health space. And in particular on pathways for companies, especially companies that create products, which was my original background, pathways for them to help reduce people's exposures to toxic chemicals. And so I took a roundabout way to get here, but
the best ones are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Roundabout way, but it's a good fit, a natural fit.
That's great. That's great. And help us understand too the context. Why is clean beauty so important to EDF?
Well, so we've been working for a long time towards a safer marketplace, and in particular around safer cosmetics. I'm happy to say that our work and the work of, our fellow NGOs has really helped in terms of spurring a number of companies to set commitments. We now have retailers that make up a large percentage of cosmetic sales, for example, like Walmart and Target and Sephora and Amazon, with chemicals policies out there, chemicals policies around reducing and eliminating chemicals of concern from cosmetic products. And clean beauty, we've been interested in that because that's also come up as a new way for companies to start talking about this, to start doing some work on a safer marketplace. There was a Washington Post article, I think earlier this year, where they said, when it comes to clean brands, over the course of the year, they jumped 39%. And so it's really become a destination for consumers, a destination for them looking for products that they can trust that won't expose them to toxic chemicals. And they're flocking to it. But on one hand, we think it's a really good opportunity in the marketplace, but there's no common definition. There's no standard for what clean means. There's no, regulatory definition of what clean means. And so that also means that there needs to be some responsibility about how companies approach offering clean beauty.
Yeah, right. And sort of bring some, I'm wondering too, if having a common definition, and I think we've got a poll on this, Sonia. So audience, get ready here. We're wondering if a common definition of clean beauty would help accelerate the entire industry's efforts to move towards safer products. So if you would give us a quick answer here on your screen with the poll, that would be great. And we'll leave this up for just a minute. And while you're thinking about that, if you have a definition of clean beauty that you like or what it means to you, I want to invite you to put that in the chat. We're going to grab those all together and try to do something interesting with that as a follow-up to the audience today. So again, go ahead and give a quick minute to the poll that's on the screen there, and also write your definition of clean beauty in the chat box, please.
And can I participate in the poll as well, Stacey?
Yes,
Everyone?
Please,
yes. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
And Sonia, whenever you feel you've got enough participation there, you can go ahead and end the poll. So while we're waiting for the poll results, Boma, let's understand how EDF is working in the clean beauty space. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Sure. So I just wanted to share my screen real quickly because it really harkens back to our 5 pillars for a safer marketplace. So let's see here.
Go ahead.
And I just wanted to have these up. Can you see the graphic there at all, or yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. So
yes.
Yeah, so for our mission for a safer marketplace, we root it within these 5 pillars. And these are the things that we believe companies should be focusing on as they are trying to create safer products. It's really about, the 5 ones are institutional commitment, supply chain transparency, informing consumers, safer product design, and then public commitment. And really, when you boil it all down, we're talking about making ambitious, bold goals, setting goals for your company and your products. We're talking about transparency, transparency within the supply chain, but also transparency to your consumers, to your investors, to other stakeholders. And then really rooting this in a safer chemistry philosophy too. So, not just around what are those chemicals of concern that should be removed from products, but also what are those safer alternatives, and what's the framework for how you as a company are trying to execute that philosophy throughout your business. And so for us, the world of clean beauty and what we expect from companies in the clean beauty space is the same that we would expect from the larger beauty community, larger cosmetics world, and quite frankly, the larger consumer products space.
When companies participate, I mean, you've got some really interesting brands that thank you for sharing that graphic.
Sure.
It makes it so much easier to grasp. What are some of the benefits, and I'm coming at this spontaneously here, that companies enjoy when they kind of follow that framework?
Yeah, I would say definitely one is about, it's around reputation and customer loyalty, right?
Yeah.
So all of this work in safer products, and especially in clean beauty, is about trust. It's about the trust that a consumer is putting in a company to purchase products for them and their family that they believe are going to be safe for their family. So it's all about trust. So that's definitely one thing, consumer loyalty. I think it also connects to showing your competitors and your own investors that you are taking a proactive approach when it comes to managing chemicals, and specifically managing out toxic chemicals. Those are clear benefits. And I do think it also helps with the bottom line. As I mentioned before, the growth of shoppers looking for safer, looking for cleaner products, it just continues. And so it's also helpful from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, and you know, there isn't a sector of the economy that we're not, you know, where equity isn't important, has been important, is important, but we're shining a better light on it. How is that playing out in beauty and personal care?
Yeah, that's a very good question because, you know, unfortunately, we do see that there are disparities when you look at beauty products. And so some of the same disparities that we've seen in other parts of the economy, like housing, like education, we also see them here in terms of products that are marketed to women of color in particular. And there have been some there's been great research around this issue showing that there's often a greater number of toxic chemicals, in particular endocrine disruptors, in products marketed to women of color. And so there's definitely an equity issue here. And when we look across the clean beauty landscape, one question that comes to mind is, is there an equivalent number of clean beauty options being marketed to women of color? And so I think that's definitely a place where clean beauty can improve.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that. Let's take a minute now, Sonia, let's go ahead and put up those poll results. So the question was, would a harmonized definition of clean beauty accelerate the availability of safer products? And an overwhelming yes. So thank you so much for everybody for participating in that. I think we're feeling the same way with your work, and and some of the other folks in the series that we're focusing on. So that really resonates with our audience as well. What role does data play? And actually, give me just a second because we're doing okay on time. You know, your definition, could you provide your clear definition, Boma, of clean beauty?
Yeah, you know, for us at EDF, clean beauty is about offering the best available on the market today. So what's the best of the best on the market today? When we are talking about minimizing human health impacts, minimizing environmental impacts. And, you know, I do agree with most of the listeners here that it would be great to have a harmonized definition. But yes, we absolutely believe that at the very least, companies should be pursuing, as they're looking at clean beauty, they should be pursuing, is this the best possible type of product that I could be offering to my consumers today, and what am I doing to make that possible? I think it's really about having a boldness in terms of what you're trying to offer, instead of making it a marketing gimmick or just trying to cater to that segment of consumers that want this.
Yeah. That's a great point. It leads us to, when we're talking about the best available today, minimizing human and environmental impacts, what role does data play in that?
I think data plays definitely a big role there. And I'll take it back to what I said earlier, which is, why are consumers flocking towards clean beauty products? They're doing this because of trust. They're doing this because they want to provide products for themselves and their families that are not going to increase their exposure to toxic chemicals. And so they're putting a trust in companies to provide these products. And what can really help a company meet that demand, meet that trust, is following the data. And so there's a number of things baked into that. One is data on the types of chemical hazards that can lead to chronic diseases and disorders. let's not forget, we're talking about beauty products, right? So we are talking about products that people use on their bodies every single day. Products, I think there was, for women, for example, somehow we use on average 16 products just on our face per day. Now, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so that number has plummeted. That number has plummeted, unless, you know, you're doing a webinar like this one, but you know, think about that. So that's, you know, 16 products applied just to the face, you know, every single day. So it's important, it's vitally important to think about what are chemicals that can increase exposure to certain chronic hazards, right? Another thing is, with respect to data, is looking and understanding the scientific determinations about the chemicals that are linked to some of those diseases and disorders. Yeah. And then finally, you know, chemical hazard assessments, as you mentioned, describing, you know, what Come Forward is trying to do. It's so important because these assessments help us in terms of understanding and comparing candidates for replacement ingredients, so that there can be a level of confidence that replacement ingredients will not introduce the same or other hazards, right? And so data is a through line in all of this, in all of this work, and it's incredibly important. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important.
And it's been traditionally difficult to get. The reason that you and I connected so many years ago now was the preservatives report that you did. Can you?
Yeah, yes. So, you know, as we've worked in this space of safer personal care products, safer cleaning products, one of the areas that has been of concern has been some chemicals that are traditionally used as preservatives in products. So not a concern in terms of, like, you know, having preservative in products, because of course you need those. But in terms of some of the chemicals that have been utilized for their function, for their preservative function. So one gap that we saw was a need for how do you help inform the selection of alternative ingredients, or even the creation of alternative ingredients. And so we launched a project, a safer preservatives project to do that work. And then as part of that work, we selected, and we had advisors from a number of companies and, you know, institutions, and worked with an assessor to help us build hazard profiles for 10 commonplace preservatives. And with that work, we were able to demonstrate trends for particular hazard endpoints to avoid in the, you know, in looking at alternative preservatives, or in the creation of new ones. It was also a way to walk through that whole process of alternatives assessment. You know, alternatives assessment has been a burgeoning practice, burgeoning practice, right? And we even have the alternatives assessment.
A4.
A4,
what
yes, thank you.
For? Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh, what is all?
Maybe one of our A4 friends will put that in chat for everybody.
Yes,
to
please
see.
do, because I'm trying to give it a shout out. Trying to give a shout out to that community of practice,
yeah.
As one of the paths forward for being able to make smart decisions about replacements. Because, you know, there's been a lot of attention in terms of identifying what are the chemicals what are the chemicals that need to be removed from the marketplace. And that's very important. And that, of course, is very important because there's a lot of work to do there. But we also need structured approach for introducing replacement ingredients. And the work of that community of practice really helps there. And thank you for putting the full A4 name in the chat. Yes. So anyway, yeah. So going back to the preservatives work, the preservatives report that we published, which is still available on our website. It was in addition to the library of some alternatives assessments that had been done by other groups like GC3 to kind of show a path for doing this for a particular functional category and identifying particular trends that could be helpful in terms of building up a list of criteria for what you do want out of a preservative. And we were happy to see that it provided some information for a preservatives innovation project that the GC3 led the next year, like a successful project that they led on trying to find find innovators and find alternative preservatives. Which goes back to how all of this work that we all do really helps build upon each other and, get us closer to that safer marketplace.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the calls to action in that preservatives report was we need these are now my words, a globally harmonized repository of chemical hazard assessments for safer alternatives. And my co-founder, Lauren Hine, and I said, yeah, we do. And so when we set about to do that, Boma, with our few minutes, keeping this on track, I want to leave this with a real tangible for our listeners today. Can you offer maybe 3 things that brands, manufacturers, and formulators listening today can do to be leaders in clean beauty?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for bringing up, our main call to action through that report with the clearinghouse. Because you're right, doing that work it was very important to keep the conversation going. But at the end of the day, it also showed that it can't be like these piecemeal efforts happening, that we really do need to have, especially for, formulators and designers. It would be effective and more efficient to have a one place stop, which is, why when you did reach out to us a few years ago, we were like, yes, this is very important work. Thank you for reaching out. So if I was, going back to your last question, if I were to provide, a few key pieces of advice to companies, I think one would be, first one would be, don't think of clean beauty as just a niche part of your portfolio. Think about how it's going to improve your entire portfolio. So that's one. And as I talked about earlier about disparities that already exist in terms of toxic chemical exposure for consumers of color, also that has to be a big part of this outlook of what does this mean for your whole beauty category, and what are you doing in terms of leading on resolving those disparities. Another piece of advice would be around transparency. So as I mentioned before, like 3 of our 5 pillars for a safer marketplace are rooted in this idea of transparency. Supply chain transparency, which is helpful in terms of providing the data that you need to make your program strong. Transparency with consumers and engagement with them. We've seen a bunch of clean beauty shops, if you will, that have popped up from retailers, but there are definitely ways to enhance the engagement of consumers and to provide them reassurance of what's behind your definition of clean, and helping them keep track of how the purchases that they're making. We actually just we released a demo of what that could look like at sustainableonlineshopping.com, of how you can, better engage your customers and consumers when it comes to offering clean products. And then finally, I would say that, most of today's clean beauty is focused on ingredients that are not in the products. And what we also need greater attention on is the ingredients that are in the products, and what you as a company are doing to verify that those new ingredients don't present the same or equivalent hazards. And that's one of the reasons that we like the work that Come Forward is doing, to offer companies a methodical way of doing that.
Yeah, nice summary. So don't make this part of your niche portfolio. Make clean beauty your driving force. Transparency in multiple ways, consumer, supply chain, etc., and move beyond restricted substances. Move beyond the chemicals of concern, and instead look to say this is safe for humans and the environment. Nice, sweet. Oma, thank you so much. With that, I think we're going to be able to wrap up on time. Thank you for being so generous with your insights, with your time today. Sure. I know this is quick and rapid fire, and I hope listeners enjoyed it. You can follow our progress, Come Forward, on LinkedIn, or visit our website at chemforward.org. We hope you'll join us next week for a coffee conversation with Mia Davis, who's the Director of Environmental and Social Responsibility at Credo. And Sonia, do you have that slide up? Great, thank you so much. And because you're registered for this session, you are also registered for that session, and then the following week with Carly Klekis from Sephora. So we hope you'll to see you again next week, same time. We'll keep it fast and interesting. Have a great day. Bye-bye.